Metabolic benefits of the combination of keto diet and intermittent fasting. Introduction. The ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting have gained popularity for weight loss and metabolic health. Both have individual benefits for weight and diabetes management, but no studies have explored the combined effects on glucose metabolism. This review examines the evidence and potential health benefits of combining both approaches, metabolic health and glucose variation, investigating the profound effects of synergistically integrating intermittent fasting protocols with a meticulously curated ketogenic dietary approach. Background and rationale. Over the last century and a half, dietary guidelines advised by health professionals and policymakers have influenced global nutrition recommendations to help address alarming health issues. In Western countries, people adopted a diet rich in grains in the 19th century. There has since been an interest in carbohydrate restriction by health professionals and the general public, specifically a low-carbohydrate diet, such as the ketogenic diet, which has been effective for weight loss. Furthermore, the practicality of fasting became popular by the 4th century, despite being recommended over 2,000 years ago to treat particular conditions in Hippocratic. Interest in occasional fasting is also resurging, precisely a time-restricted eating pattern, which has in part been linked to the increasing prevalence of obesity and chronic, non-communicable metabolic diseases. Considering how low-carbohydrate diets and fasting protocols have benefited individuals and been safely used for clinical treatment, combining the two interventions would have synergistic effects. Thus, this essay provides evidence of metabolic improvement and, where necessary, biological mechanisms that result from a ketogenic low-carbohydrate diet and fasting. Within the general population of Western societies, metabolic syndrome, METS, a complex disorder affecting 20 to 35% of Europeans, is diagnosed during clinical assessments concurrent with excess accumulation of body fat. Cardiovascular disease with sedentary associated factors has been attributed to this syndrome, with affected individuals having 1 or 2 times the risk of people at normal body weight with type 2 diabetes, mellitus, and obese individuals. Optimized fat oxidation substrate. Utilization refers to the amount of carbohydrate or fat burned as energy. Therefore, fat oxidation, fat loss, is enhanced if one can increase the amount of fat that is being burned as energy. Fat oxidation tends to be optimized by accelerating the rate of fat breakdown and by increasing fat uptake by the body's cells. The consumption of a low-carbohydrate ketogenic diet, as well as practicing daily intermittent fasting, increases the amount of fat that is being burned as energy. In other words, fat loss is optimized. Therefore, an optimized fat oxidation rate due to the synergy of the ketogenic diet and daily intermittent fasting could be a productive approach to improving body composition and long-term health. These studies support and show that by consuming a low-carbohydrate ketogenic diet, the body switches from burning glucose to fat as its primary energy source and is no longer able to use glucose. Such a situation promotes the excretion of more fat in the urine and the activation of an enzyme that encourages the binding of free fatty acids to form triglycerides. The increased production of this enzyme also enhances fat uptake into body fat, resulting in increased fat storage. To oxidize more fat, increasing fatty tissue triglyceride lipolysis is essential. Since fat burning operates cyclically, if more fat is being emulsified from fat cells, more will need to be burned for energy. Given that the ketogenic diet promotes an increase in lipolysis, this means that you will start to excrete more fat in your urine. Later in the cycle, more fatty acids will be oxidized to provide energy. Therefore, as a continued cycle, there is an overall fat-burning effect and potential weight fat loss. Further reductions in blood glucose and increased circulating ketone bodies are another favorable characteristic of the low-carbohydrate ketogenic diet. In particular, when participants are fasting, these effects are particularly prominent. In contrast, insulin is also reduced when ketone bodies are elevated. Given that blood glucose is reduced via the ketogenic diet, circulating ketone bodies also increase. Therefore, as a general byproduct, blood glucose is reduced and ketone bodies are increased. Throughout the period, intestinal and pancreatic hormone levels and adipocyte levels are also reduced. Our research also positively favored the link between insulin sensitivity and plasma levels. In terms of fat metabolism, we observed several other exciting findings as a result of these findings. Given that the ketogenic diet enhances urinary fat excretion, combining this diet with intermittent fasting would likely result in further fat loss. Mechanisms of fat oxidation. Like glucose, multiple biochemical and physiological mechanisms also highly regulate fat oxidation. Hormones like insulin or glucagon can be crucial in controlling the energy substrate used. Insulin facilitates the uptake of nutrients into cells, mainly glucose and fatty acids, by increasing the production of GLUT4, a glucose transporter, in the membranes, and the internalization of the transporter so it can uptake the nutrients. The consequence is that the circulating levels of glucose and fatty acids drop. Once the GLUT2 transporter is no longer being produced and the concentration of circulating nutrients stays low, the body starts using the stored nutrients. As it cannot use glucose, it begins breaking down fat cells to use the free fatty acids, a potent alternative fuel source. In keto-adapted people, hormone changes like this prompt the fat release from cells and increase the beta oxidation of this fat. During fasting or periods where carbohydrate and protein availability are low, liver glycogen reserves are soon depleted, and an adaptation to using fat as a primary energy substrate occurs. Associated with both a fasted state and keto adaptation, in which a more significant proportion of fat is oxidized, are coordinated changes to these enzymes that can metabolize fat. Indeed, several studies demonstrate how various metabolic pathways involved in fat utilization are upregulated in participants following as little as 24 hours of fasting. Consequently, a higher degree of fatty acid mobilization from the adipose tissue occurs, and the fat oxidation rate is increased, eventually forming essentially ketone bodies. The fasted state, resulting in upregulation of mitochondrial efficiency, can be referred to as mitochondrial biogenesis. Mitochondrial efficiency is linked with the ability to transport lactate to mitochondria, the Krebs cycle flux, the ability of oxidative phosphorylation to consume oxygen for the production of ATP, and the resulting respiratory exchange ratio of oxidative phosphorylation. These are the variables that are ultimately measured during respirometric testing. The increase in mitochondrial efficiency results in an increase in ATP production ranging from 30% to 300%, and similarly a 30 to 300% increase in fat utilization. The human body can change in as little as 10 days, and specific carbohydrate intake increases fat utilization by 3%. Combining the addition of intermittent fasting on top of a ketogenic diet provides an additive effect, leading to an even higher fat adaptation. Most clinical studies of ketogenic diet durations of 12 weeks of fully adapted diets report that the VO2 max respiratory exchange ratio reaches a minimum of 0.68, a proxy for oxygen consumption. Benefits of fat oxidation. Fat oxidation is a key ingredient in the recipe for health and longevity. It should come as no surprise that increasing fat oxidation can be highly beneficial to many conceivable benefits. For example, because fat is a very stored and concentrated energy source, the body can access and use large amounts of energy when it is oxidized. This is often reported as a source or benefit of specific diets and fasting. When energy levels are sustained through a reliable, densely stored source of energy, such as body fat or external fat from a diet, the person can more easily make the life-changing leap away from reliance on high variability glucose, which is less energy dense. When a person relies on a diet that supports the oxidation of body fat or dietary fat, it can result in an easier time managing weight and improving body fat percentage. Measuring and managing different types of fuel use is essential in many biochemical areas of the body, such as exercise physiology and nutrition research, for evaluating the metabolic flexibility of a given person. Metabolic flexibility refers to the speed and potency of the body's ability to switch its energy source from one fuel to another. Regarding dietary interventions, evidence suggests increased fat oxidation in nutritional conditions. Still, more research must determine whether consistent long-term metabolic flexibility changes are observed. Offering tangible proof that support of fat as a fuel leads to metabolic adaptability, giving you the potential to be a more efficient, frequent, and durable fat oxidizer. Improved mitochondrial health. The food we eat is essential in keeping our mitochondrial health and energy production up to speed. Mitochondria are organelles that function like power stations inside our cells, where they convert dietary energy into chemical energy in the form of ATP, using a process called oxidative respiration to be used for cellular function. Improved mitochondrial health and biogenesis lead to enhanced ATP production, which makes us more resistant to fatigue and increases our endurance. These mitochondria are also easily damaged by the reactive oxygen species they produce, which may lead to a vicious cycle of oxidative stress and damage. This is particularly relevant in the heart, which uses the most energy of any organ. Non-invasively, we can indirectly assess how well these processes function by measuring the amount of oxygen our breath uses at rest and performing light exercise for the health of our cardiovascular system and mitochondria. The ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting, triggered mitochondrial biogenesis by increasing levels of mitochondria-enhancing enzymes and increasing the number of fuel-burning mitochondria inside the muscles and liver cells. This process lowers oxidative stress and inflammation levels that can be toxic to our cells and blunts levels of ATP production. Therefore, these strategies can improve long-term mitochondrial health and extend maximal lifespan. Aerobic capacity and muscle mitochondrial function are significantly enhanced in elite athletes following ketogenic and low carbohydrate diets over weeks. Mitochondrial numbers in muscle and lipid oxidation are increased following acute carbohydrate restriction in the muscles of regular exercisers. The heart's enhanced ability to burn fats and ketones following chronic ketosis or fasting confers cardioprotection after a heart attack. Therefore, fat oxidizing ability, resting ATP production, and mitochondrial coupling efficiency are essential markers of overall health status, longevity, cardiovascular health, and oxidative capacity. Role of mitochondria in energy production lifestyle changes can modulate the expression of numerous genes, many of which have the potential to be directly involved in metabolism and energy output in the cell. During an energy balance, nutrients are converted to adenosine triphosphate, ATP, the cell's energy currency. Mitochondria are the central site of ATP synthesis in eukaryotic cells and, therefore, the organelles responsible for more than 90% of the total cellular energy production. Mitochondria must adapt to different physiological states and changes in cellular energy demand, and these changes are partially responsible for the mitochondria-related benefits afforded by regular physical activity and physical training. Mitochondrial malfunction is closely related to metabolic diseases and reduced lifespan. In contrast, increased mitochondrial efficiency may lead to increased lifespan and improved health span. Different dietary manipulations, such as the ketogenic diet, low carbohydrate/high-fat diet, and physical activity, can increase the efficiency of mitochondria by facilitating ATP synthesis through oxidative phosphorylation while reducing the mitochondrial production of lactic acid. Moreover, low carbohydrate/high-fat diets can reduce oxygen consumption, maximizing the ATP produced per molecule of O2. Thus, diets that mimic periods of fasting might have some of the health benefits of a complete fast. Mitochondria have developed several mechanisms to deal with variations in energy demands. Effects of keto diet and fasting on mitochondrial health. A significant consequence of keto and fasting is increased mitochondrial biogenesis. Mitochondrial biogenesis results in an increase in the number of mitochondria per cell, which may, in absolute terms, make these mitochondria more resistant to stressors than those in non-biogenesis adapted cells. This also translates into an improved biochemical performance of the mitochondria. The characteristic values of the fasting and ketogenic metabolism, characterized by a concomitant decrease in insulin and an increase in sensing energy molecules, lead to dephosphorylation of the mammalian target of rapamycin complex 1 and subsequent activation of PGC, 1A, and other transcription factors related to mitochondrial biogenesis, such as peroxisome proliferator, activated receptor gamma, and estrogen-related receptor alpha. Reactive oxygen species are constantly produced in the cell, and their levels depend on the balance between production and elimination by the antioxidant defense systems. In response to nutritional restriction or modifications of the diet's quality or nature, a local increase in reactive oxygen species production can act as a direct signaling pathway leading to enhanced mitogenesis and therefore antioxidative capacity. Studies have also shown that increased muscle mitochondrial mass and abilities can be observed through dietary interventions such as caloric restriction, fasting, or ketogenic diet. Such adaptations occur within the first few days of dietary change, since most studies have applied an 8-week diet. Mitobiotic can be performed in hypoxia to stimulate ketogenic metabolism and obtain a synergistic physiological adaptation that may further enhance metabolic resilience. Research is still to be conducted on this aspect of the program. Additionally, a significant decrease in mitochondrial function is reported with age, such as the low capacity of energy-producing pathways. This can lead to low energy production and be related to low performance in physical activities or sports. Improving mitochondrial function can benefit aged individuals keen on improving muscle mass and functionality and increasing health span and lifespan. Reduced oxidative stress. An imbalance between the formation of free radicals and reactive species of oxygen and the endogenous antioxidant protection systems of the human body characterizes oxidative stress. It has been widely suggested as one of the central concepts in the metabolic control of the cellular energy balance often seen in chronic metabolic disturbances, including obesity, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, and others. Indeed, the upregulation of reactive oxygen species and other free radicals can create various problems related to chronic inflammation, beta cell damage, and insulin resistance. Oxidative stress is strongly related to cellular senescence and several aspects of the aging process. The body can regulate oxidative stress through several enzymatic and non-enzymatic defense pathways that counteract reactive species' toxic and hazardous functions, such as hydrogen peroxide. It is noteworthy that a ketogenic diet and fasting have been shown to modulate oxidative stress by decreasing basal levels of the oxidative damage product. Moreover, both a ketogenic diet and fasting have been shown to activate endogenous antioxidant defense systems. At the endpoint, a study reported that individuals following a ketogenic diet exhibited significantly lower levels of markers of oxidative damage, such as urinary isoprostanes, plasma 8-oxo-DG, and 8-oxo-GUO. This is supported by studies on healthy volunteers and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease rodents showing markers of greater enzymatic antioxidative capacity following ketogenic diet treatment. In humans, a reduction in oxidative stress was noted with ketogenic MCT drinks acutely and with long-term ketogenic diet treatment. An increase in superoxide dismutase and total antioxidant status was demonstrated as early as 7 days localized to the liver in rodents. The same group also increased NAD PBH quinone dehydrogenase. It decreased in 8-hydroxyguanosine in the liver in another study of rodents after 12 weeks on a ketogenic diet. Oxidative stress and free radicals. Oxygen is necessary for life because of its high efficiency as an electron acceptor. Consequently, it helps generate the high-energy ATP molecules most cells use. Its reactivity with organic molecules leads to the accidental generation of radicals, which can damage cellular components over time. Free radicals are molecules containing an unpaired electron in their outer shell. This allows them to cause extensive cellular damage through the theft of electrons from other molecules in the body. Oxidative stress can be defined as an imbalance between free radicals and antioxidants in the body, disrupting the vital redox balance. Because of the ability of free radicals to damage essential cellular components, it has been suggested that oxidative stress is the driving force behind essentially universal chronic diseases, including almost any chronic inflammatory degenerative condition such as diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and neurodegenerative diseases. Free radicals can be formed due to normal metabolic processes, the breakdown of harmful molecules, or exposure to environmental factors such as tobacco smoke, radiation, pollution, and toxic chemicals. Certain diseases, including diabetes and obesity, have been linked to higher levels of oxidative stress, suggesting that reduced production or inadequacy of antioxidants in the body may play an essential role in the evolution of the particular pathology. Stressful conditions, either cell-specific or generally in the whole organism, trigger mechanisms that allow cells to adapt or repair, if possible, or to fail to switch on suicidal pathways. One of the common responses to oxidative stress is an inflammatory response. This is because free radicals can promote the release of pro-inflammatory proteins like cytokines, inducing inflammatory cascades in the body and ultimately leading to inflammation and related dysfunctions. Antioxidants are molecules that can neutralize free radicals. The body produces some antioxidants, known as enzymes, but most come from food. Antioxidants can stabilize oxidants by transferring an electron, becoming inactive, and in some cases free radicals. The body contains many different antioxidants, many of which are found in high levels in the most commonly consumed food. Enhanced insulin signaling. Now, combining the keto diet and intermittent fasting would benefit your metabolic health by enhancing insulin signaling. Insulin is the hormone released by the pancreas after eating. It regulates several processes associated with glucose metabolism and energy homeostasis. Dozens of other hormones work alongside insulin to regulate blood sugar. Similarly, insulin signaling works in concert with several other related metabolic pathways. The job of insulin is to help glucose enter our cells so that it can be used for energy. And if these cells are full, they store it as fat. When something reduces our ability to store fat, stored fat is released from our fat tissue into the blood and burned for energy, resulting in fat loss. Reducing insulin signaling, or losing the body's ability to store fat, will also reduce the power available to our cells and could lead to inappropriate biological responses to restore fat storage. Insulin resistance is a fundamental feature of type 2 diabetes, and limiting weight gain and increasing insulin sensitivity are at the core of treatment. All other things being equal, increasing insulin sensitivity will increase fat loss and get you to your body composition goals much more rapidly than reduced calorie dieting without regard to nutrient quality. Importance of insulin signaling in metabolism. The importance of insulin signaling for metabolism lies in its ability to direct nutrients into various pathways. At the simplest level, insulin facilitates cellular uptake of glucose. In addition, it triggers pathways responsible for storing glucose and other nutrients after a meal when levels of glucose and nutrients in the blood are elevated. Protein synthesis will be initiated in response to a protein-rich meal. At the same time, insulin facilitates lipid synthesis in response to eating a high-fat meal. At the other end of the spectrum, insulin signaling pathways and the insulin receptor will be negatively affected in low-energy states. There is a crosstalk between insulin signaling pathways and other metabolic pathways. One of the metabolic pathways where insulin plays a regulatory role is lipid metabolism. In lipid metabolism, insulin signaling activates enzymes that promote the synthesis of fatty acids and glycerol, and the synthesis of storage lipids. One of the significant hormonal signals involved in programming for the utilization of fuel sources is insulin. The dysregulation of insulin production and receptor sensitivity results in several metabolic disorders. Insulin resistance is the decreased sensitivity of a target tissue to the actions of insulin, such as glucose uptake and protein synthesis. Interventions in the form of diet and exercise have well-known effects on insulin sensitivity, which include increased insulin sensitivity and reduced symptoms of insulin resistance in different tissues and study groups. Eating patterns have also been suggested to affect insulin sensitivity, and changes in eating patterns and how they affect metabolism are the focus of this review. Effects of keto diet and fasting on insulin sensitivity. Despite the high total calorie content in the keto FMD, the simultaneous low carbohydrate and low protein content may allow diabetic patients to use low insulin to metabolize carbohydrates and thus achieve sound therapeutic effects. The serum insulin levels of individuals who have adopted a ketogenic diet detached from the FMD and are only subject to a prolonged fasting period of 3 weeks are decreased significantly to 1.7 plus 0.4 mu/ml compared to baseline, 7.5 plus 1.0 mu/ml. Is retained up to 6 months after commencing the diet. Although the total daily intake of keto, Atkins, and paleo diets is larger than the control, Vaspin concentrations in fasting insulin within 6 months decreased by more than 30%. High fasting insulin is an essential cause of insulin resistance. Over time, AUC 125 values are enhanced by 77.0% in the control group and only 22.0% in the keto FMD group. AUC 25 values are enhanced by 61.0% and 36.7% in the control and keto FMD groups, respectively. After 3 KMD-FMD cycles, 15 weeks in total, the fasting glucose AUC is higher in control, 22.8% increase, compared to the keto FMD group, 3.6% increase. A decrease in the insulin resistance index suggests that KMD-FMD makes a more healthful response to insulin regarding glucose homeostasis. Moreover, a decrease in insulin response is beneficial from a weight loss standpoint. The association between weight loss and early insulin sensitivity is recognized. In addition, by decreasing insulin levels, pancreatic B cells can be preserved since insulin is toxic in excessive concentrations to these cells. In the longer-term follow-up, the passage of time maintains the effect of the KMD-FMD on insulin resistance, since insulin resistance progressively rises in light of the opposing muscle interorgan exchanges, resulting in increased hyperinsulinemia. In brief, KMD-FMD also affects insulin resistance independently from simple weight loss by promoting a healthy insulin response. The indices of the healthy response to insulin due to switching from glucose to ketone bodies are noted. Here, keto and fasting benefit the original response to insulin by reducing proteases, their substrates, and other energy-wasting immune reactions. Furthermore, in establishing the metabolic panel, some metabolic changes derived from immune cell improvement should replace other factors in standard metabolic models. Conclusion. In conclusion, in this essay, evidence from the literature was discussed regarding the ability of a ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting to promote fat oxidation, mitochondrial health, insulin sensitivity signaling, and lower markers of inflammation. The independent benefits of the two dietary strategies were additionally discussed. The metabolic benefits of the keto diet include increased fat oxidation, weight loss, and reduced hunger. Metabolic benefits of intermittent fasting were the promotion of fat oxidation and decreased energy intake. Combining these diets was proposed to have additive benefits to health. Researchers from multiple fields unite in the belief that enhancing fat oxidation has a place in preventing chronic disease. The intersection of obesity, metabolic inflexibility, insulin resistance, and low-grade inflammation underpins many chronic diseases. New hypotheses to enhance health span and decrease disease risk are needed while considering ease of implementation and promotion. Only some people respond positively to either diet, so each person's dietary approach may differ. In conclusion, evidence and a sound rationale support an individual willingly incorporating a keto diet plus 1 or 2 intermittent fasts per week to promote healthy metabolism and decrease the risk of metabolic disease. Summary of key findings. Restricting carbohydrates and allowing time for the fed state to end through dietary restriction offers the following metabolic health benefits. Complete depletion of liver glycogen within 2 days. 2 to 3 weeks are likely necessary to adapt to using primarily fat, ketones, while sparing muscle mass. Also, it typically takes this long to increase fat oxidation during low-intensity exercise. The combination of restricting carbohydrates and time-restricted eating likely offers further benefits to improve mitochondrial efficiency and increase insulin sensitivity. Unfortunately, most investigations do not utilize the combination of less than 30 g per day of carbohydrates and time-restricted eating, so most of the evidence does not address this issue. Overall, much evidence suggests that a low-carbohydrate diet and time-restricted eating may be beneficial. However, the results are much less profound in most studies for 2 reasons. First, most subjects only ate the combination of the keto diet and time-restricted eating for a day or two, and at most for about 10 days. It is unlikely that the metabolic changes necessary to induce rapid weight loss or cures for all diseases are going to be healed in this short of a time. Second, most investigations do not use a keto diet with this low carbohydrate content. Implications for metabolic health and weight management. Although the translation of this concept to weight loss has only been partly investigated so far, the ability to adopt a keto diet taken together with the fasting-induced increase of fatty acid oxidation suggests that adaptive thermogenesis should appropriately respond to such a negative balance. Despite the rapid initial weight and fat mass loss induced by their combination, sequentially, during the adaptation phase, intermittent fasting, and the new steady state, rather than concurrently, these strategies can significantly increase the possibility that an extra portion of fat mass and thus body energy stores are mobilized as fat calories instead of protein muscle loss. In addition, physical activity-induced adaptations are not only performed at submaximal intensities. Reducing the respiratory exchange ratio, in turn, could favor metabolic flexibility and thus also promote fatty acid oxidation to extend the duration of glycogen-sparing activities, including muscle recovery that rely exclusively on mitochondrial oxidative capacity. Finally, other physiological and psychological factors help to improve weight loss maintenance. Considering that the penetration of intermittent fasting into the general population could instead increase thanks to weight loss testimonials, the results support the rationale to implement dietary changes even when resting energy expenditure metabolic distortions are challenging to occur. However, the definition of a unique and universal optimal diet can no longer be pursued. Metabolomics and microbiota insights, as well as AI systems, are promoting an individual-based approach in the promotion of a diet that is the most suitable for each person based on personal goals, lifestyle, and disease profile, moving from a universal conception of weight management to a human-centered approach of well-being management.